Hey guys, it's Brant, and I just want to say really quick, I really appreciate you guys watching my videos. Be sure to click subscribe and hit the notification button so you get notifications so you don't miss any content. Also, feel free to leave a thumbs up or leave a comment and enjoy the video.
In my head, in my head.
All right, hey guys, it's Brant, and I'm back, and if you can see on my screen here, I've got my buddy Rick from It's All For You Demon with me, and we have been just talking in the background over the last few days since the live feed, the live stream that I did, talking about 70s Kiss. And this guy wasn't around for 70s Kiss, but he sure enjoys reminiscing about it and talking about, and he's got so much memorabilia. Like I said, he makes me sick. But I was alive during it, so we like talking about it and everything. And so he didn't get to watch the live feed. And so he said that he talked to me a few days later and said, hey, I've got some notes, got some questions. And I said, well, you know what? We can talk about it. And I've been wanting to do one of these co-side-by-side things here for a while. And so I figured, well, what better chance to do it than with my good buddy Rick. So Rick, introduce yourself, tell little people about yourself, a little bit about your channel, and then let's talk about these questions you want to talk about.
All right. Thanks, Brant. Thanks for having me. My name is Rick. My channel is It's All For You Demon. Basically just celebrating the fun of being a Kiss fan. I kind of do oddball things, basically just talk about fandom, do some album reviews, and I do a lot of wouldn't it be cool if scenarios. So it's all just about having fun and celebrating Kiss. I'm a fan of all eras, all members. I just enjoy the fun of the band, and I love talking to other Kiss fans, and that's why I gravitated towards your channel, because you talk about Kiss and you state your opinions, but you never slam other people for their opinion or their thoughts. You know, it's one open community, and that's my favorite thing about being a Kiss fan.
Well, like I said, I really appreciate that. I've discovered your channel, and ever since I discovered it, I became borderline obsessed with it. I've actually watched almost every one of your videos. There's maybe some here and there, and I just enjoy. I really like the memorabilia videos that you pull out, and I like that you don't just show the product that you're talking about. One of my favorite ones was you were talking about the Kiss notebooks, and you were standing in front of the place where the Kiss notebooks was printed. And I do the same thing. You think the same way I do. It's like so many years ago, right there, they were running through there, and and I always thought, how many little lucky little boys and girls whose mom and dad works on, and think about if they'd have came home with stuff that would be priceless now, like defects or misprints. I mean, that's the stuff that just run through my head. Like somebody, because in printing, I know a guy that does printing, and you're always going to have test prints, and you're always going to have misprints where there's a color that don't get put down, or there's something that's off, and they'd be like, most times a company will just scrap that stuff, throw it in the trash bin. I don't think they had recycling bins in the 70s. Just throw it in the trash bin, and hey, mom or dad, pick it up, take it home to little Johnny and little Susie, and they've got Peter Criss. His face might be a little off or whatever, but those misprints and just would be. It's almost like the way variants in albums are now. You get the misprints of somebody's name, or the misprint of a song on the back, that like the take me off of Kiss, you Kiss Alive 2, that
how often at a record store do you spin Alive 2 around just praying?
Every time.
Please.
Every time. If I see an Alive 2, it's like, please. Crap. One of these days I'm going to go, please, yes. One of these days I'm going to do it. And I can find it online and play pay wazoos for it or whatever. But I've said in one of my videos too, it's so much more fun when you find it in the wild. It's so much more fun. You know, I'm still looking for that elder that's got the songs wrong on the back, but it's got it right on the album. You know, or I'm still looking for, every time, the elder's one of those I do. And there's just all these little variants, and I don't even know of all the variants. There's some people out there, I think, have you ever heard of Tom Shannon? There's a channel out there called The Rockologist, and I think the channel is called Kiss My Wax or something. There's a guy, his name's like Jason Herndon, and there's Tom Shannon, and there's a guy, Andrew Spambatti, that's actually in a Kiss cover band. I think it's Mr. Speed is the name of it, and it's a really good looking cover band. And those three guys, they have a channel out there called Kiss My Wax, and they have and they're known together as the Rockologist. And Jason works in the music business. He's works for a pressing company. And Tom Shannon, you need to look this up, Rick. Tom Shannon, he basically has written the Bible on Kiss releases. Like he has these things he puts out. This basically shows every label variant, not just for U.S. releases, but worldwide releases. Talking about the rarest of the rare, and he owns a lot of them. So yeah, so if you've not seen them, check them out. That's a free plug for them because those guys are actually pretty decent guys, unlike some channels on the internet. But who will probably not remain nameless. They probably will get named by the end of this video, or I might not name them because I don't want to give them the pleasure of having their name called. But but I love videos like that, and so in so many ways I always ask you ahead of time, hey, is it okay if I kind of rip you off and do something you've done? Because the video you've done where you went to and the shooting locations that you do for some of the movies. I used to work in movies, and all the shooting locations and stuff. Most of the movies I shot were not really around where I lived. They were down around South Carolina, in Charleston, or down in Atlanta. Before Atlanta was hot, it was still hot. In Arizona and places like that. But I love seeing those on site videos, those on location videos. And I told you this off camera a few weeks back, that I'm actually going to go down to my hometown when it starts warming up. And I'm going to visit some of the places that I did when I bought Kiss albums. They still standing. They're not the same company, and they're not the same businesses. But I'm going to go and visit my old high school, junior high school, because I used to take my Kiss albums to school, and I used to wear my Kiss jacket. And I'm going to go visit the drugstore that I bought. That's not a drugstore anymore. I'm going to go visit the record store that I bought. It's not a record store anymore. I know what they are, but I'm not going to say till my video. Yeah. But it's kind of cool. I'm going to go back to some of those places in that, and that's kind of ripping you off. But you gave me your blessing. So
I mean, that's the fun of. To me, that's the fun of the fandom, is seeing someone else's story and reliving it with them. That's the coolest thing ever. And that's really what gravitated me towards your channel. I was watching your album reviews, just listening to you dive into those tracks and talk about the first time you heard it. And I was like, man, this is like hanging out with your friend. I mean, this is before I even knew you. Right. This is like hanging out with your friend on a Saturday night, talking rock and roll. Talking about Kiss albums. Yep. Yeah. Yep. Or rock and roll in general. Yeah, it's like I said, I'm known for Kiss. I've started doing some 80s retrospectives. I just put one out, Aldo Nova, that a Patreon subscriber requested. Def Leppard Pyromania is coming out probably in the early part of next week. It's such a good album. And, those are albums, all these 80s albums are albums I literally grew up through my teens. They shaped me in some way, shape, or form. They shaped me, influenced me, or there's a very important or just a very fun part of my life or time of my life that was attached to these. And I also had somebody ask me, and I'm actually going to, in a way, and they'll probably be shorter videos, because even though I've almost gone through all the Kiss albums as reviews, I think I have 5 albums to go, and then I'm going to do some post-Kiss solo albums like Aces and Peters, Gene's one and Paul's one. But they actually would like for me to go through and not really so much review
but retrospect and like talk about memories from this album or memories from each album and things like that. And I do have some memories. Some of those are going to be longer than others because some of these albums, even though I've owned them all in some shape or form since I was, 8, 9, 10 years old, I think I had the whole collection up to Dynasty by the time Dynasty came out. And then I was actually there for the solo albums to come out. I remember I bought Dynasty with my own money. I had every album after that up to Asylum, and I didn't buy Crazy Nights and Hot in the Shade until later. I didn't buy those two. I was too busy listening to Guns N' Roses and stuff like another band, Faster Pussycat, and other bands like that, L.A. Guns and Motley Crue, and which I'm very excited for the Dirt video that's going to be coming out. I'm
excited, but
I'm ready for all the PR to go away. I'm ready for
and we are going to lose Motley Crue. We as our generation,
Yeah.
You're gonna go to the mall and there's gonna be a 8-year-old girl with a Motley Crue shirt on,
and she's not gonna know anything about Motley Crue that made "Shout at the Devil."
You're gonna say, "What's your favorite song?" She'll be like, "Oh, I just like the show. I just like the movie."
Yeah. You don't know about all the inside stuff that was going on during the song 10 Seconds to Love, do you, little girl? So let's go ahead and let's get to this. So the live feed the other night, I know you told me ahead of time you weren't going to be able to be there. And so what is it about that? I know you said you got some notes there. And so just kind of talk to me about it. If you got notes, what you want to maybe, whatever,
Yeah, so the first note I made, you just mentioned that Dynasty was the first record you bought with your own money.
Mm-hmm.
And I was curious, you said you saw Dynasty on tour, correct?
I did. Charlotte Coliseum. Yep.
Do you remember at all ever seeing that Return of Kiss commercial on TV?
I do remember.
Awesome.
I do remember seeing that, and it played. It seemed like, and I know that when you're a kid, time travels a little differently and time moves a little differently when you're a kid. But trying to get my Dynasty out. But time moves a little slower and a little different when you're a kid. And I remember, like I said, I discovered Kiss. It was right after Alive 2 had came out. It was right after Alive 2 came out. Although Destroyer was my first album, I got Alive 2 within the next week. I got them really close together. And then I remember when Double Platinum came out, it seemed like it was a little bit of time. Even though when you look at it, it wasn't. When you look at the timeline, it wasn't a little bit of time. And then it seemed like forever for the solo albums to come out. And the solo albums was hyped. That's when the merchandise was just like a freaking waterfall. That was when everything was coming out. The guitar, the radio, the makeup kits, and all that stuff. That's when all that, the pinball machine, the comic books, the Kiss Meets the Phantom of the Park. And that's when all that stuff was coming out. And so it was just like a flood. And then you started hearing, after the solo albums came out, everybody was like, the solo albums was met with mixed reviews and everything. There was ones that, like I said, I've grown to love and appreciate them. But I wasn't big fans of Peter's and Gene's solo albums back then. I liked a couple songs off of Gene's. I liked a couple songs off of Peter's. But Paul's and Ace's, I liked, as a kid, I liked Paul's better. And as I've gotten older, I've liked Ace's better. But like I said in my last during that live feed, I kind of go back and forth between the two of them, all depending on what kind of mood I'm in. Sometimes I might put Aces on. I might put Aces on and be like, no, let me put on, because I still think Take Me Away Together is one of the best Paul Stanley. It's probably the best Paul. To me, it's probably the best Paul Stanley song ever. It's a great song.
It's got such a Zeppelin vibe to it.
Mm-hmm. And it sounds like, and you think about it, even though the guy worked with him very little, the guy that did work with him producing that was one of the songs he produced, and he also produced Kansas. He had produced it. And it has that in the beginning, it has that very Dust in the Wind, and just those notes, that da na 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 da dun. I mean, you know, it hits those minor notes, and it just kind of comes in. Paul singing soft, and it just comes in like dun, dun, and he comes in that yesterday, and that's the Paul's voice I love. Paul's voice on his solo album it's great. You know, it's honestly the best. Now, he started experimenting with his voice on Dynasty. That's when he tried to start doing the falsetto, and that continued. A lot of people wasn't a fan, and it continued with the Elder. He did a lot of falsetto on that. But I remember it seemed like forever for Dynasty to come out, and Dynasty was heralded as the return of Kiss. And I remember this album and this tour was probably hyped as big as the End of the Road tour is now, if not bigger. They had a stage so gigantic that they had 2 of them. And they lost money on this tour hand over fist because they had changed and you know, their music had changed. And even though I love this album freaking rocks. Everybody calls this the disco album, and I say in my review, this is not a disco album. There's a couple disco-ish songs, but this album was amazing. It was mysterious because the poster came out, or the album came out before they revealed their costumes. And this was originally supposed to be called Out of the Asylum or something like that. And they originally, you know, they called Asylum. And, you know, you've seen the pictures now that we never saw before back then, that this is like a composite picture, that like they're not really all in here together. And they composited this together, and they were in the straitjackets, and then there's the poster with them in the straitjackets, and then they airbrushed it out and made them black. And then it was like, this is the first time you hadn't seen Peter in the whatever you call them, the brigades.
Bandoleros.
The bandoleros. Yeah. You hadn't seen Ace in his spacesuit. You hadn't seen Gene in his chains and everything. They had on black, and everybody immediately started saying, "What's up?" And they're like, we got new costumes coming. And then I remember when the albums came out. I remember when the magazines came out. And there was the magazines that had the posters, and you folded it open, and it was those pictures. And I can still see Ace with his cape on, and he's got his hands like this. You remember that poster where he's got his arms up? And they actually replicated that shot. They actually replicated that. The cool thing about Unmasked, now I was going to go into this in detail in a video. It's just one of the things I've never gotten to. But there's
that picture at the top.
There's so much. See that right there? And this is essentially they're not in the same position, but those are
that's the poster.
That's
from
the
Dynasty.
poster from Dynasty. That's the way Paul is. That's the way Ace is. Gene's like that, except he don't have his tongue stuck out. And there's Peter. That's how they look. That's basically the Dynasty poster recreated. But yeah, so see, there's Ace in that shot. You know, and I always thought Peter looked like he was smoking a cigarette, you know, because he's, you know, like that. And you knew that he smoked and stuff, but they kept.
I always thought
so much.
Ace's face on the Dynasty poster is the perfect rock star smear to that snotty. His face on the Dynasty poster and that inner ring of that record.
Yeah, he's just
he
like
has such a rock star look to his face.
Yeah, because he's kind of got his head up a little bit, like, yeah, I'm the shit. I'm about to have 4 or 5 songs on this bitch. You know, I'm about to have. You know, this is my first album. This is my first album we've made since my solo album that sold the most, and I'm gonna have 4 songs on this bitch.
It was very much a Gene and Paul aren't running this show anymore.
Yeah, but I remember I love you. You talked about the solo albums, and I've talked about the solo albums before. But what I love is how close up they are in here, and you can see the pores. You know, and this is something too. I don't know if the camera will catch it. This isn't my album. I bought this album in a record store. But you talk about fun. I don't know if you can catch it. I hope it does. But if you catch it the right way, you will see that somebody has actually traced. I'm trying to catch it. I'm trying to catch it in the right light, and I don't know if I can. But somebody's actually traced, and you can see. I can't catch it in the right light. I'm trying to catch it on Gene. There it was for a second. You see there around Gene's eyes?
Oh yeah, I do.
And you see around and around his mouth. They've actually like put a pencil down, God, I wish I could catch it.
and trace the makeup.
And it's made indentions in the cover, and I can't catch it in the right light. But
it's so cool.
But what's funny is it's Gene and Paul, but not Peter and not Ace. They just traced around Gene, and they just traced around Paul.
Wow.
God, I wish I could catch it because I know you would love it and appreciate it, but I just can't.
Man.
I'm gonna have to take
there was like a 9-year-old kid out there with a piece of typewriter typing paper.
I'll take a picture of this. I'll take a picture of this and I'll post it on my Instagram. But for those of you who want to see it, I'll post it on my Instagram, my Facebook, on my social media because I know I can catch it in the right light. But yeah, I noticed that the other day. I had it pulled out and I was like, how cool is that? Somebody's little hand was, doing that and everything. It's just so cool. But
that's awesome.
I remember that. I remember when that show came out. I remember when the album came out. I remember we waited in line at J. Joe's, and they ran out of records.
Oh man!
But we got ours. But the line came out, and you'll see in the video whenever I make it. The line came out, and it was in downtown corner block, and it went came out of the front of the building. It's like one of those. It's like one of those stores where they've got it's old timey where they've got the two big huge glass. It would be like where they had put mannequins or whatever, and you kind of walk in a little bit to get to the door. There's they're in between them, and so as you're walking in, you got glass on either side of you that's part of the store. But the line went up into the door there and came out and turned and went down the street. And I remember we got there and waited in line. Went in, they had the album playing. They had the big posters on the wall and everything. And those posters were there, like everything. And got the album and probably got some posters and everything and went home. And I could not, even though we only lived about 5 minutes away from downtown, I remember the car ride. I remember I already had it open. I already had the poster out in the car on the way home. And I took it home, and I remember when I Was Made for Loving You started. And I remember sitting there. You got to remember the last things that we heard was the solo albums. And then before that, the last things that we heard, we had seen, Kiss Meets the Phantom. But the last thing that we heard before that was stuff off of Alive 2 and the stuff off of Double Platinum. So I Was Made for Loving You was very different than every bit of that. So, but I remember the very first time I heard 2000 Man, I loved it. I didn't know it was a cover when I was a kid, and I didn't give a shit. But that very opening guitar, that and it's saying do on the drums, and I was just like, I'm a drummer, man. I just immediately started, because But I love this. I love Dynasty. It's a great album.
Rock and Roll Over is probably my number one favorite album, and Dynasty is always tied with it. Dynasty is my number one album, but I have to have a 1.2, I guess.
So what else did you have?
So I was, you were mentioning people who only celebrate Gene, Paul, Ace, and Peter. And this is the Tinder area of today's Kiss conversations. You mentioned Van Halen and Van Hagar, and there's two camps there.
Yep.
Everyone's always divided, and I just made a note that's why I gravitated towards your channel and other people's channels like Nothing to Lose, 75. He and you, even though you have your favorite era, you don't bash viewers for their opinion. And this tour has just created such animosity, I guess, would be a good word. And it's just there's a whole camp of people out there that just want to if anyone's thinking about going to the show or has gone to the show, they're worthless. And that's not what the band's about. The band's about celebrating the whole legacy of Kiss.
Yeah.
From beginning to end, every era. It's all about the music.
Yeah.
And if the music makes you happy, that's what we should all celebrate.
Yeah, and I totally agree. And what I find funny is, there are people who there's some bands that, even though AC/DC has, AC/DC is one of the bands I think did it the best. And I think, honestly, AC/DC did it the best because they had Mutt Lange produce, a couple of their albums when they were making that transition period. He produced their last album that Bon Scott was alive, and he produced the first album, Back in Black, with Brian Johnson as a replacement. And Mutt Lange's got like fingers and ears of gold. He turned Shania Twain into a multi-million country star, and he's done a lot. He did a lot for Def Leppard. He turned Def Leppard into. He took them from On Through the Night to Pyromania and the Pyromania is my favorite Def Leppard album. But I know that commercially, the Def Leppard, for the commercial, the Def Leppard fans as a whole, they love like Hysteria. And Hysteria, to me, it's got good songs, but it sounds, almost every song sounds the same, and it's so far removed from even Pyromania. And, and Pyromania is a step removed from On Through the Night, and everything. So, but I think that AC/DC did it really well, because you have replacement singers usually never go off very well. It didn't go off well with Motley Crue. It didn't go off well with Van Halen. It didn't go off well with there's another band I just had in mind, replacement singer. But the fans have a tendency to you have split camps. You have the people that like for example, Van Halen. They like the original 1978 Van Halen up to the album 1984, And I remember 1984 was my first Van Halen album. It came out in 84, and I got it in 84. Got it through Columbia House. But I got a lot of my Kiss albums, a lot of my albums through Columbia House. But then you have, but when was Van Halen their most successful? Like financial wise and selling out big, huge arenas wise, was when they had Sammy Hagar. Because that's when they had all the big pop hits and all the big rock pop hits that they didn't have. And, and that's even, that's the same. Kiss, I think Kiss was, even though Kiss was successful in the 70s, they weren't successful for all the 70s. They were living on $50 a week up until the release of Alive. And they're putting out albums every 6 months. And, and even after that, they were putting out albums they were rapid firing the first 3 albums, and they rapid fired. They put out Destroyer, and they immediately, to do Damage Control off of Destroyer, put out Rock and Roll Over, which a lot of people consider the best album. Then they put out Love Gun to kind of keep the momentum going. And then they were, hey, let's put out another live album. They put out Kiss Alive too. And then that's when the momentum started slowing, but that's when they were the biggest, not only off of their album sale. It's funny for me to go back. I always give how many albums Kiss sold, how high they went up in the charts. Kiss has never had a very high charting album, and they've had few gold and platinum albums as compared to other artists of their time. I mean, they never sold an album as much as Peter Frampton did. Peter Frampton Comes Alive. It outsold the Live 2 like crazy. But Kiss, their shows is where it was at, and their merchandising was where it was at. But then there was also fans who hated the merchandising, and even Paul and Gene and some of the members of Kiss mentioned by the time, used to be, if you listen to some of the early Kiss, that shit was dark. I mean, listen to some, that stuff was dark, very adult content. And even though they were singing about pulling the trigger of a love gun, and as a 7-year-old kid, I had no idea what he was talking about. I thought the little bang bang thing that came in the damn album. It's almost like when you, as an adult, you watch a kids movie with kids today. There's stuff in there for the adults, but the kids still enjoy it. And so that's how their music had became. It kind of very mixed down and watered down. And the hardcore Kiss fans noticed it and started leaving in droves. So the Kiss sheep did not begin. Now it did not begin at the reunion tour. Some of the Kiss sheep started filtering into the shows all the way back into the late 70s. If you want to be honest, and I might have been considered what would be during that time a Kiss sheep, because the people that they were saying, they said, next thing you know, there's more kids in the shows than there are adults. My first show was in 1979. I was 10 years old. I was a kid, and that's not what they were catering to in the beginning. They were catering to kids in their 20s and, and stuff like that.
I often wonder if a lot of the argument would stop, and you had mentioned this maybe in the live stream or in another video. I think you mentioned it in the live stream. But I often wonder if the argument would stop if Tommy and Eric had different personas. Would that stop a lot of the argument?
It would stop a lot. It would diffuse the scab bomb. Because that's what a lot of people, and I love the guy to death. I support him. He supports me, Ralph Vieira. They're very anti-scab. And I know I can't speak, I'm not going to speak for Ralph, but I know that me and him have talked and we share the same opinion. Kiss, and he's a fan of all eras of Kiss too, even the current era, because he likes Monster. I think he said Monster is one of his favorite. He really likes Monster, but he's just like me. He doesn't like the fact that Gene and Paul are employing two guys and having them cosplay as two former members when they themselves said that it wouldn't be right. I mean, you've seen the videos of Paul saying it. It would not be right for anybody else rather than the four members to wear the makeup because it would be diluted. But now you got to fill these arenas, and you can't get Ace and Peter, or you can, but your pride's not going to let you do it.
Somebody had a really good point, and I don't know where I read it. It might have been on one of your comments of your videos, but somebody was mad that Eric Singer was singing Beth for this tour, and
I think it's pointless.
Yeah, I agree, but somebody said no one batted an eye when Eric Carr sang Black Diamond all throughout the 80s, and I was like, holy crap, he's right.
Yeah. He didn't do it with Peter's makeup on, though.
True.
That right there, like I said, man, these two personas here are like a religious church to some people, especially this guy right here. This guy right here, people hate the fact that Tommy's wearing his makeup. They hate it. I'd hate to be Tommy. I mean, I would hate to be him. I mean, I know he's going to live a better life, better than I ever did. I'd take his paycheck, but I know that he would live a better life. But if Gene and Paul, and I know people's going to say bullshit, people that know me for reals, not the people on the internet, but people that know me for reals, know that I'm about to be very honest here. If Kiss was to call me up and said, Brant, we're going to give you your dream. We want you to come play for us in Kiss. We want you to come play drums. We feel like you can do it. We feel like you'd be great. On one condition. You got to put this makeup on. I don't care if they were, and I know right now people are going to say it. I know they're going to say it. I wouldn't do it. I would not do it. Even though Peter is not my favorite member of Kiss, I appreciate, if it hadn't been for Peter, we wouldn't have a Kiss, we would have a different Kiss, because it was these four guys, and the bloods, like Peter has said. I've heard Peter say in an interview, it was them four guys sweating it out in that ratty, roach-infested firecracker box of a loft, sweating it out, creating these personas, creating that music. Now, it's unfortunate that these guys eventually took over and took the reins. But come on. These guys pretty much had it together. Let's admit it. Let's be honest. They did get pretty fucked up. I mean, Ace himself even says, I fucked up. They did. I mean, they were both at one point in time, he was on so much coke and he was on so much alcohol and blow that these guys couldn't see straight. They were wrecking in cars, and I mean, Ace almost killed himself in a bathtub.
at the same time, Paul and Gene were so drunk on their own egos. I mean, it's the same thing.
Yeah, it's the same thing. They just had different drugs, and they all had their own different demons that they fought. I mean, you read Paul's book. The first time I ever heard Paul's book, it kind of shocked me. I have it on audio tape. I have it on Audible, so I get to hear Paul say these things. And to hear Paul say these things, I idealized a lot with him because he is I think that's why he's so egotistical and so controlling now of Kiss, compounded in the fact that basically him during the early 80s kept Kiss alive because Gene was off doing everything else but Kiss. But Paul was so self-conscious with his ear and with his relationship with his parents, and that guy, I mean, he was damaged. I think that he's gotten help over the years and he's better now and everything. But just to hear him talk about himself in his book and hear the words come out of his mouth, I kind of felt sorry for the guy a lot of times. I mean, he's talking about being rich and being famous and spending time alone in his hotel or spending time alone at his house because he wasn't a sociable person in that way. He became that person on stage, but that was a persona. But then back at home, he was away. He was socially awkward and all this other stuff and everything. You're like, really? But he truly was. But I appreciate all eras of Kiss. I think there's two things that would stop all the arguing in their tracks. If Paul had created new characters for Tommy and for Eric, like he did with Vinny and Eric Carr, they would have had more merchandising. They would have had the ability to do more merchandising, and they would have diffused the scab bomb. But would they be selling tickets like they are now? Because we don't know. That's the unknowns.
Yeah.
It's easy to say no because it's just these guys' makeup that's pulling. Because Tommy don't move around on stage like Ace does. Tommy actually moves around most of Gene and Paul, but Tommy don't move around on stage. Ace, used to always say that he wasn't used to Earth's gravity. I think he was just drunk, but he'd stagger around the stage and swagger. He had a swagger about him, but I think that they missed an opportunity, but who knows, And
I think if they would have just done a convention, again, do a convention tour with everyone,
yeah,
and call it the end of the road. I mean, granted, they wouldn't have sold out arenas, and they probably missed, big money there. If they would have just done a convention, it would have saved on The Voice. It would have brought in every member. Kind of would have been like a cruise.
Yeah.
But
I hate to say it, as I've heard a lot of fans say, and even in the most recent video I put up today where I just put a video up today that I'm catching a lot of hell for over Paul Stanley busted lip syncing again during Heaven's on Fire, and it is obvious. I actually saw a comment come up just before me and you went live talking about that's still refutable evidence, and I'm like, you got to be fucking kidding me. Some people, you're just not going to be able to tell them or show them. They're going to believe what they want to believe. But I don't know. I lost my train of thought. The current tour. It is a money grab. I mean, it really truly is, because I know that a lot of things Kiss themselves does not determine. They don't determine how much parking is. They don't determine how much the place is selling for beer or drinks. They don't even determine, to an extent, the ticket sales. They influence the ticket sales by how much they're telling the promoter, we're going to get paid a set amount every time we play, whether we sell the place out or not. And we're going to get a set amount. And I don't know this for sure. I actually said this in one of my videos, and they're like, how do you know? Did you negotiate their contract? No, Guido, I didn't. But I'm just saying, most of the time, bands of that stature, they get paid a certain amount to walk onto the stage, whether the place is full or whether the place is empty. So that's what it comes down to. Whenever it gets a couple days before the show, Gene and Paul ain't sitting there. Even as Gene is a student money person he is, he ain't pulling his iPad out going, oh, we got 1,200 tickets to sell. We need to start dropping the tickets prices so we fill these seats up. That's not Gene that's doing that. That's all the promoter and, and stuff like that. They may influence, they may dictate the merchandising, because I know most bands get a very huge portion of the merchandising, and usually a great bit of it. But it's a money grab for them. But
I'm going simply to celebrate my last Kiss show.
Yeah,
that's the main reason I bought a ticket. I just want to go with my friend Dan, who introduced me to Kiss, and my friend Todd and my friend Chuck, and we're going to do the Madison Square Garden show, so that is in 2 weeks. Yeah,
and I saw that the Detroit show just happened last night, didn't it? I mean, that's kind of, that right there kind of breaks my heart a little bit, because I actually saw on Kiss's Instagram, Kiss says farewell to Detroit, and I was like, if it's true, it's the end of an era. I mean, it's the end of a huge era. That they may be playing some of these places for the very last time. We'll see. But
I know I saw, this is kind of interesting. Lynn Goldsmith today posted that she is actually going to shoot Kiss at Madison Square Garden, and she said that will be the final time she ever shoots Kiss.
Oh, well, yeah. And see, I kind of wonder, I didn't look at the set list. I didn't look at setlist.fm to see if they played a different set list for Detroit. I had somebody ask me, they're like, why does Kiss not change their set list or whatever? And I said, they can't just change their set list. They have program pyro, program lighting, program lights, and all that stuff to go along with it. If they change a song, what they basically have to do is they have to take a part of the show out of the program, plug in the new programming for the new song, and then they can play that song like they did with Dr. Love. They got rid of, I think they got rid of a song that you really wanted to hear them sing. They got rid of, which one was it? Hide Your Heart. And they put in Dr. Love. Me and you talked about this, I think, when we were testing or something. I don't know if that's an equal trade, because I like Dr. Love, but I think that if they're going to be trade, it's
not a live song.
It's not the. I mean, the version on Kiss Alive 2 is better. I've never heard a better live version than the version on Kiss Alive 2. But if they're going to trade out songs, if they're going to if they know that they're try to cater to the newer crowd, they need to put the younger crowd, the fans that's been. I talked about with Scott Rock that whenever Kiss reformed. Well, they didn't technically reform when they hired Ace and Peter and did the reunion tour and put out Psycho Circus. I mean, let's call it what it is. They didn't reform. They picked up a whole new era of fans with Psycho Circus, and so I think that's the biggest bulk of the people who are the sheep now. That's going to. I'm not saying that every person going to the show is a sheep, and I'm not saying if you go to the show you're a sheep. But I'm just saying that was around 2000s, and so that was about 19 years ago. So if somebody was in their 7, 8, 9 years old, they'd be about in their late 20s by now. And if you look at a lot of the crowd, you see a lot of older people, you see a lot of kids, but you see a lot of that 25, 35 demographic in there. And that is all directly around, it's around the revenge. It's around the Hot in the Shade, Revenge. Whenever they go pulling out one of the Revenge songs, they do a song from Revenge. I can't remember which one it is.
Are they playing Unholy?
I don't think they're playing Holy.
Good God, put that in the set.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. They should put in songs from. They need to put in more songs from that era. I mean, I know we're not going to get any songs from Carnival of Souls. That's the only way I'm ever going to hear Kiss play a live Carnival Soul song, if not on a cruise. But the only way I'm actually going to hear it is if I win the lottery and I win $700 million and I pay Kiss $20 million, and I don't even know if that would do it, to play the album for me. I I might get it, And Paul could probably sing it because a lot of the songs are in that lower register. So Paul
Wouldn't
could
that
probably
be
sing.
something? After all this end of the road stuff's done, they do like a Carnival of Souls club tour.
Oh my God, I would pay to go see that faster than I'd pay to go see the end of the road tour.
And I would totally admit, my first thought when Gene announced that we're going to do a 3-year end of the road tour, my first thought was take off the makeup. Bring Bruce back and go.
Yeah.
Oh, I miss that revenge era.
I told you. I've told you this off camera too. Talking is that me and you were, and I think I might have said it in. I don't know if I told it to you or if I said it in the live feed. I can't remember. But Carnival Souls and Revenge era, with that band with Bruce Kulick and Eric Singer, man, that's my favorite era. Especially when you get to Revenge. And when Gene has the goatee and Paul has the scruffy beard and Eric has the blonde hair and they got on the long leather jackets and they look like a legit rock band.
Oh, they're badass.
Because a lot of people make fun of Kiss. For a lot of the reasons we love Kiss, my wife makes fun of Kiss. Because she's not a Kiss fan. She likes some Kiss songs, but what songs she likes? She likes Forever. She likes Hide Your Heart. She likes... So
you're saying she likes all the songs I like?
Yeah, yeah, right. But she's not a Kiss fan, and she doesn't like rock. She listens actually some more modern and more heavier rock than I do. But she also likes Nickelback, so I don't know. We might have to question her taste. But so I like all eras of Kiss. I think that each one of them has played a part. Even this last part, I think that each one of them has played a part. There's been things that I've liked better and worse about each era, but I don't badmouth any era of Kiss, and I don't badmouth a fan for what they like and what they don't like. I've said in like somebody said, I'm trying to get people to not go and derail the tour. I'd never tell you, and I don't have the right to tell you what you do with your hard-earned money. If you want to buy the tickets and set them on fire and film it and put it on YouTube, do it. If you want to go to the show and have an awesome time, and like I said, I'm still on the fence about it, but I will admit I'm watching tickets and I'm watching ticket prices at the show in Charlotte. And basically for the main reason is, it was my wife's idea of all people. She said, why don't you go and take your son? He used to not even know who Kiss was until you introduced him to him. He's done these videos with you. Y'all could go. You could experience Kiss for the last time. You've seen them many, many times before. You could experience them the last time with your son. Y'all could go have a father-son day and road trip, vlog it, put it on your, YouTube, do a live stream during the show. She's like, and I'm like, you know what? That's why I'm not trying to get tickets close up, because it's like the way I want to see Kiss, I don't want to see Kiss down close. I want to see Kiss the way I see Trans-Siberian Orchestra. Whenever I go see Trans-Siberian Orchestra, because Kiss, this show, they're almost like a Trans-Siberian Orchestra in the depth of their show. Their stage,
the production
of their show is very wide. You got screens on the side. You got pyro that starts in the middle and goes all the way out. You got the octagons are all over the place. You got Paul coming out into the crowd. You got the arms coming out over the crowd and everything. So, and you got the big enough screen behind them. So the place I'm going to be seeing them at is an outdoor venue. It's going to be in August, and they actually have lawn seating. And the lawn seating is in the back, and it's the cheapest. But I'm hoping to get some lawn seating and just be able to sit back and watch the show. And, and like I said, take my son, and let him experience Kiss before it'd probably be his first and only time,
Mm-hmm. And that's exactly what I'm doing. My friend Dan introduced me to Kiss when I was 14. Our first Kiss show, he was a fan back in 78. Our first Kiss show was Hot in the Shade. Mm-hmm. And so this is going to be our last, and just kind of a, good way to go out, I guess.
Right.
On your live feed, you mentioned you did you mentioned Crazy Nights, and you said something that I believe you said you thought Crazy Nights was the weakest album in the catalog. I may be putting words in your mouth.
It is. It is. I think if I pull my list up in my head,
Oh, that's what it was. It was how you reviewed all the albums.
the way I've reviewed them and the way I scored it, it has scored the least. It has been my least scoring album, and it scored really badly. It scored, down in the four something. And like I said, it is just that song, that album to me. When I hear it, it's not that there's not some good songs on it, but that album to me sounds like every song on it almost could be the backing track to a montage in a bad '80s movie.
That's exactly what I think, and I think that's why I like it because I'm not a huge fan of the album. I do like it, but I'm a huge fan of Turn on the Night. Mm-hmm. I'm a huge fan of Crazy Nights, and I'm a huge fan of Reason to Live and Thief in the Night. And I mean, those songs have such great 80s hooks.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, they totally remind me of something that could have been in like a Police Academy movie.
Yeah. Yeah, they are definitely 80s. And a lot of them, they sound like, they sound like they're Kiss trying to be Bon Jovi,
Oh.
You could definitely tell. I mentioned in my review, and Paul actually was writing songs for that album on a keyboard, and some of those songs, the keyboard is just so it's here, and the guitars are here, and even Paul has said, listening to that now, that it doesn't hold up because maybe the keyboards was a little too much, and like I said, there's songs on it that I like. But man, it's not an album that, like I said, I didn't own it until I think I did own it. I think I bought it on cassette and gave it to a girl because she liked it, and so I was like, "Here, take it." Maybe I had CD because this was about CD time, and I would have probably bought it because it was Kiss. And then I remember that I didn't own Hot in the Shade. Until the first time I heard, I've never told this story before. The first time I heard Hot in the Shade was on the way to the show. I had found out last minute the Kiss was coming, and so I was able to get tickets with a friend of mine, and so we were driving down there, and I was like, "So what's some of the songs off this album?" And he's like, "You've never heard this album?" I'm like, "No," and so. He put it in. He put the CD in, and I listened to the album for the first time going down to a show to see it. And now I loved the Hot in the Shade show. Was phenomenal. I mean,
Amen.
it was amazing. With the Spinks and it was just the
Coming out of the
laser,
mouth.
the lasers and all that. And they coming out of the mouth, and it was great. And it was a great it was a great show, and. But I still think even after I didn't buy the album, I think that I didn't buy another album. I know I bought Revenge because I heard Unholy and I was like, shit, I'm buying this because that's the Kiss I remember. It took me back to, Lick It Up. I mean, it took me back to Creatures. I'm like, that, and of course with Unholy, you had the return of Mr. VV.
I had always heard that during the Hot in the Shade tour, they had a marketing team that was surveying ticket holders for the Hot in the Shade show, and they asked them, what is the main thing you would want in a new Kiss album? And the number one question was a Gene single. So that's why Unholy was born.
Yeah. And, and first time Gene ever had a lead track on an album, and,
I remember hearing Unholy for the first time, how freaking heavy it was. It was so kind of un-Kiss in a way.
I remember it was definitely not anything like you play Unholy and then just pick any track off of Hot in the Shade. And even though Hot in the Shade had some rockers, or pick any track off of Crazy Nights. Even Asylum, even though Asylum had some rockers, they was really starting to slip off
Sunset Strip era.
Yeah, there's really starting to slip off and head towards what was going to make Crazy Nights and Hot in the Shade. But that hole at the very beginning, that scratching, and which Gene put in later, but that just opening that, and then that, and I was just like, and then it comes in and Gene's singing like in that real gutter voice and singing through that flanger, and it just makes his voice sound warbly and everything. Not as bad as it did on Phantom, Kiss Meets the Phantoms. It's, it was like, but I love, and then now the only thing that kind of got me about Revenge was one of those albums, even though it was an Ezra album, it was one of those albums where it felt very unbalanced, and the tracking on it was really jacked up, because you have this badass, unholy song, and then it goes off, and then it's like, you get the stripper song. But I do like Take It Off, because I like the way it starts off, and I love the way the drums sound on that album. But it has that whole long drawn out introduction, that and drums just doing that simple beat, and that guitar comes in with those chords like, and then Paul comes in with that scream at the beginning of it, and I'm like, okay, they're going to show us a little something different. That's and it just felt like that album. They just, from the very first two songs, they went whoop whoop like that in two different directions, and there wasn't. It was like it lacked a little bit of a cohesiveness, and plus it had some really kind of some songs on it that I wasn't really too fond of. But
I Just Wanna is one I could never hear again and be all right.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to fathom I Just Wanna on the same album with Unholy. I mean, like I said, it's just like, why didn't you put this on Hot in the Shade? They would have belonged on Hot in the Shade. It would have worked.
Heart of Chrome's a great song.
Heart of Chrome is a good song. But they had the only thing that I didn't like about that, and I love Spit. Spit is, it's a great Gene song, and I love when Gene and Paul trade off lyrics, and Paul comes in, what does he say? I need big hits, big hips, sweet lips. I love when they trade off, and they go into that I Need a Whole Lot of Woman, which sounds an awful lot like they're ripping off Led Zeppelin. But I love the guitar solo in that. I love that Bruce brings in the Star Spangled Banner a little bit, and then he just goes into that wailing solo after. I mean, that was the album. I always respected Bruce back during the Asylum era and Hot in the Shade era, and there wasn't a whole lot of really smoking guitar on Crazy Nights. But I always felt like it was during that era where everybody was just trying to play faster. And it lost a little bit of the rock and a little bit of the rawness and the soul. But the solo on Spit is one of the best solos on that album, especially when he gets into that and he goes into that wailing and everything. And then they just have that whole syncopated thing where they're going, and they're just so damn tight. And that's the era of Kiss that I like the most, because musically, I think that they were a solid band, and they were a solid band with four people who had. I'm not saying that Tommy Thayer is not a good guitarist, but to me, he doesn't bring enough of a uniqueness or enough of a personality, because he's too busy being forced maybe to pretend he's Ace. To sound like him, play like him. And even the songs he sings, Out of This World, When Lightning Strikes. Now, I actually like When Lightning Strikes.
I liked All for the Glory.
Yeah.
I love Eric singing, and I think that song was perfect almost. Speaking of which, I wanted to ask you, and I don't want to ruin a video if you have this idea for a video, but comparing Sonic Boom to Monster, which one do you like more?
Well, I'm actually going to be reviewing Monster and Sonic Boom. I will say this, and I don't want to spoil it, but I will say this for a lot of those who say that I'm a naysayer about the current Kiss and even the makeup wearing of the members. I do not like them wearing the makeup of the original Kiss members. But I do appreciate their musical abilities that they have. And I actually like those two albums, both of them, a lot better than people think I do. But You'll have to wait for the reviews to see which one
All
I like
right.
better.
All right.
Honestly, and you want to know honestly, I'm a kind of person. I'm a very analytical. I've told you what I do. I'm an IT. I work in IT, and I work in like very advanced, in-depth IT. And so I have a very analytical mind, and I work with numbers and everything like that. So even though some people see my system as like total nerdgasm and total, nerd overload and everything, I'm the kind of person I can sit down and I can be very easily influenced by me just kind of spouting stuff off and say, excuse me. But the reason why I chose to do my album reviews the way I did, where I actually sit down and I listen to a song and I say, okay, and I have all my songs. It's even more nerdgasm. I have all my songs and my listing, my rankings of my songs across the albums in a spreadsheet. So a lot of times I'll go, man, I like this song. I think this song's a 7. And then I go on my sheet and I look and I'm like, what else is a 7? Oh, that song's a 7. Do I like that song better than this one or the same? I actually like that song a little bit better than this one. So maybe this one's a 6. And then I'll look and I'll be like, what else do I like as a 6? Okay, yeah, okay, so the song's a 6. So, I mean, and where I tell people, like my son, he'll be like, other people, I'm like, you don't have to gauge like I do. But I not only weigh the songs against each other on the album, but I weigh them against each other in other songs. And so I've actually said to people before, I got asked the same question when it come to Lick It Up and Creatures of the Night. Which one do you like better? And I told that person, I said, well, I think I like Creatures of the Night better because there's a lot of songs I like on Creatures of the Night, but there are also some songs on Creatures of the Night that I'm not a big fan of. And the same thing goes for Lick It Up. But I think I actually like more songs on Lick It Up than I do on, like more songs on Lick It Up than I dislike. But it's not just that. Then it comes with me, okay, the songs that I like, are they 7s? Are they 8s? Are they 9s? The songs I dislike, are they 3s? Are they 2s? Are they 1s? And so, like I said, to make a long story short, until I actually listen to an album and I do my little mathematical thing, and I've actually found a lot of times it's surprised me, but when I sit back and I take a step back and I look at the whole thing, it kind of stands up,
Yeah.
I get a lot of shit to this day for ranking this album so low. I rank this album pretty low, but the reason why I rank this album pretty low is because of this album right here. Of this album, because a lot of songs that's on this album are on this album,
Yeah,
and the versions I like a lot better than the versions on here. But that doesn't take away from Deuce is still a classic, Strutter's still a classic, Firehouse is still a classic. Firehouse is one of my favorite songs, but I like the version of Firehouse better on here. I like the version of Hotter Than Hell better on here. Hotter Than Hell I think is a great album, but I can't stand the way Eddie Kramer should have produced this album, not Kerner and Wise. Eddie Kramer should have produced this album, and he should have produced this album. I'm okay with Kiss and Neil Bogart producing the third album because I think it took them to get to the third album to actually get a decent sound and to sound like that they have the ability to play their instruments. I remember even being younger hearing these songs because I remember I had Kiss Alive before I had Kiss Alive 2 before I had any of the albums. Well, I had Destroyer. But I had Kiss Alive 2 before I had Rock and Roll Over or Love Gun. And I had Kiss Alive because I bought it first before I bought the other 3 albums because I was like, in my mindset as a kid, if I like Kiss Alive 2, I want to hear what Kiss Alive's about. I want to hear, you know what I'm saying? And I remember loving the cover. I mean, to me, that is just that's a fantastic cover. I mean, that mock live shot there. But, and I remember the first time I heard Kiss after hearing the songs the way they're played. And I mean, like.
Oh, yeah, it'd be like night and day.
Yeah, it's like, on the album, it's like on Kiss Alive, they come out of Hotter Than Hell. And they go into Firehouse. You got that little thing, and then it's dun 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 about that speed. On there, it's dun 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 dun. It's like is my record player spinning at the right speed? I mean, even Cold Gin.
Yeah.
It's
Well,
like
and
they're
first album
so slow.
Yeah, the first album sounded like a band that had rehearsed those songs for a year,
Yeah,
then recorded them.
yeah. There wasn't no even in their voices. There wasn't no spontaneity to them and everything. And like I said, I've come to kind of appreciate and really like the muddy sounding recording of Harder Than Hell. It does give it that heavy metal, Black Sabbath-ish kind of sound, but it was unintentional because they were actually trying to make the second album sound better than the first, and it ended up sounding worse. But the songs on it are good, but there's some real stinkers on Harder Than Hell for me. The songs I like, the songs I really like, and the songs I don't like, I don't really like. So that
On
pulls
your Creatures and Lick It Up topic, I would personally have to choose Lick It Up.
Yeah, and see, some people, you have that. See, and I love talking to people about that. That's one of the things I want to do. That's one of the things I'm going to do in one of my upcoming live feeds is, and if you're watching this and you do my live feeds, you can hear about it. And I'm planning on. I was talking with a user that was in one of my live feeds, and they were asking me when I was going to do the next one. I asked their opinion because I like having my viewers' opinions, and I'm like, well, how often do you think? And they're like, well, if not once a month, maybe every other week, or maybe once every 3 weeks. And I started thinking, well, and I've got some international viewers who live in Germany, Britain, Italy, and whenever I do a live feed at 9 o'clock at night, it's 2, 3 in the morning there. So I've had some of them ask me, hey, how about some love for the international people? And you do a feed like at 2 in the afternoon on a Saturday, then you may be able to pick up some of the international people that can't watch it at 2 and 3 and 4 in the morning. So I'm probably going to have some of those. But one of the things I'm going to do in one of my next videos or one of my streams is I'm going to pit albums. I'm going to pit Kiss albums against each other, and have people talk about which one between the two is their favorite and why. And
I've done Creatures and Lick It Up, and I did Double Platinum and Smashes.
Yeah.
That was a clear win. The Double Platinum was a clear winner there.
I like when you did solo versus solo versus solo versus solo, and you tied it in with the Star Wars release of Solo. I was like, that's genius. And I like whenever you do. I actually, it's funny because my wife has heard you. I've watched some of my videos around her and around my friends. I have roommates that live upstairs, and I've played some of your videos. I'll be playing them, and they're like, "Is that the demon guy?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And one of them's like, my friend's like, he's like, "Did he used to work in radio?" I'm like, "I think he might have. I think he might have been on the radio at least at some point in time." He's like, he just has that cadence about his voice like a radio person would.
I worked in radio, but I was in promotion.
Yeah.
I worked as a promotions assistant.
Yeah, and but I was like, the other day we were doing something, and I was in the kitchen, and my friend asked me I think he asked me if I wanted a beer or something out of the fridge, and I looked at him and I went, "Of course I want a beer," like that. And he's like, "Well, are you trying to be the Batman guy?" And I'm like, "I think I was going more for Rick from It's All For You, Demon." So yeah, it was funny. But yeah, so yeah, Creatures of the Night and Lick It Up. Man, I really like both those albums. I'm looking up because my Lick It Up's right here on the wall. I really like both those albums. I remember that one of the retro things I'm going to talk about whenever Lick It Up came out. I remember Lick It Up and Lick It Up came out about the time that I really started getting interested in girls. And songs like Fits Like a Glove and Give Me More and Young and Wasted, and they were just amazing. And plus, A Million to One is one of my favorite.
Oh man, That's possibly the best Paul. Well, my all-time favorite Paul Stanley song is "Mr. Speed."
Yeah.
But "A Million to One" is possibly the best Paul Stanley song ever written.
Yeah, "Million to One" is really, really good. And I actually like the chorus. I like the verse of "A Million to One" a whole lot better than I like the chorus. You know, a million, and when it gets into that "a million to one," you know, I love the verse part of it when it's like
that melody line.
Now that
amazing.
you've made up your mind, you know, there's one part that he says, I can't remember that line he says, but it's amazing to start a song, you know, with that opening lyric, you know, now that you've made up your mind, I'm going to let you go if that's what it takes to show love is blind. Day after day, you're further away, I can't take it anymore. I mean, it's one of those songs you listen to it, and if you really listen to it, man, it just kind of grabs you in the middle of your gut and kind of twists it a little bit. I mean, I
wonder if that was about Donna.
I think it was. And an album that I really enjoyed the hell out of the tour, but I scored very low, is this one. But now I freaking loved. I loved this. I was actually went to this tour that you know, we got, you know, the Animalized, Alive, Uncensored. But I remember being at that tour. But there's some really good songs on here, but God, there's so much filler. In my opinion, there's so much filler on Animalized.
That was the last use of the classic Kiss logo live.
Yeah.
Which, that's another thing. Not to beat a dead horse, but
now whenever,
why didn't they bring that back?
I wish they would have brought that back. And I wish they would have done, I mean, don't get me wrong, the stage itself for the new tour, the stage itself is kind of boring. The stage itself. It's all the crap that's around it.
Oh, yeah.
Is what makes it cool. The pyro, I mean, you see some of these shots of the pyro that's going off and everything, and they've got the time pyro where it comes out and goes back, and all the lights and stuff at the octagons above, which I've actually they were a little weird at first, but I've actually kind of grown to like them a little bit. But the stage itself is just this big, flat, big-ass stage. You know, it's, you know, why didn't they throw some fake Marshall amps on there and put in some steps that they didn't go up and down anyway? You know, I read a thing one time, they said that they had the risers that came down off of, because the steps, even though they looked cool and they did all the lights and everything, they were too narrow and too steep to walk down in the boots. So they didn't walk up and down the stairs. You know, Ace would get on them a little bit, but they didn't walk up and down them. They were just they're kind of window dressing. So it's just, the stage is just kind of, you know, kind of bare. But I love the original Kiss logo, but one of my favorites, and I saw it in person, and I'd won backstage pass. Not backstage passes. I'd won press passes from a radio station, and I got to be actually in between the barrier and the stage, and I was allowed to bring in a camera, and I've got some really excellent close-up pictures, and that was the freaking Asylum tour, and the logo for the Asylum tour was insane, because it was from it started at the stage and went all the way up to almost to the freaking ceiling, and it was the width of the back of the stage. It was freaking huge, and to see it in pictures, you're like, oh shit, that's a big logo.
Huge lights inside.
Had the huge lights. It was made up of the huge lights, but to see it in person, it was staggering. I mean, it was like it was huge, and it was bright. When it lit up, it was bright. And I remember, even though I wasn't a huge fan of the Asylum album, I really liked the Asylum tour. That was really good.
Was Wasp opening?
Wasp opened for them. Yep.
Oh wow.
Yep. Yep. Wasp is one of the albums I'm actually going to be reviewing. The Wasp album that's got LOVE and Wild Child and all that on it.
Oh, okay.
I'm going to be I'm going to be reviewing that. I'm going to be doing a retrospective on that album. That's one of my albums that I was like, wow, look at these guys ripping off Kiss. And that was just, you know.
As a Kiss fan, are you an Alice fan?
An Alice Cooper fan? I wouldn't call myself an Alice Cooper fan, but I do like a lot of his music. And I think I love listening to interviews of the guy. He's so intelligent. I mean, he's like Gene. He should be in politics. You know?
As a diehard, running through my blood Kiss fan, I will say I think Alice puts on a better show than Kiss. Simply because an Alice show is like an experience. He never talks to the crowd. It's like you're watching a play.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes Kiss can get a little carried away with the stage banter and.
Yeah, one thing I can tell you right now, what I'm not going to look forward to when I go see them.
I know exactly what you're going to say.
I can't stand when Paul starts doing his stuff, and I cannot. And I'm a drummer, but I hate drum solos. I hate guitar solos. And now I love Ace's guitar solos, but even the guitar solos that you hear on the live albums, they've been trimmed down because they trim them down. That's just a fact. Even Peter's solos was trimmed down. But just play music, man. Just introduce the song, say hey to us every once in a while, ask us how you doing, people, and and get back to. You don't have to give us all the, this one, just yeah, we do. That's why we're here. Play the damn song, And like I said, Paul, I love Paul and everything. He's a great musician. He's a great songwriter. He's a great entertainer. But, when you hear him coming off of singing a song and he sounded really good singing it, and then as soon as he starts talking, he's like, "How you doing, people? How'd you just sing what you were singing in this song before that?" I know how you were singing it, but anyway.
So I got to ask real quick, just kind of one last question. What about Kiss, and it can be your childhood or your teenage years, whatever. What about Kiss kind of gave birth to your rock and roll dreams? Because, you are a drummer. So obviously at some point you thought about being a rock star. We all did. What about Kiss triggered that?
I think it was, honestly, when I heard Kiss Alive 2 was, like I said, Destroyer was my first album. And I remember thinking that Peter was a great drummer. The only drummer I had to gauge Peter against up to that time, you got to remember I was 7. And the only drummer I had to gauge Peter against up to that point was the drummer for Elvis. And the drummer for Elvis, you listen to, I was not a big fan of Elvis's studio albums. Even though my mom had a lot of them. My mom was a huge Elvis fan, and therefore by transference, I was a huge Elvis fan. But my favorite albums by Elvis were the live ones, live from Madison Square Garden, live via satellite. I love, and of course I had Moody Blue. That's the album made before he died. And I remember it was blue vinyl and everything. But his drummer, kicked ass. Elvis interacted with his drummer a lot, had his drummer doing stuff, and his drummer did all these fills and all these crazy stuff and ending songs the way you hear rock drummers end songs, where they do all the stuff and the toms and snare and then end on a big hit. And I'd actually started playing drums in my room, kind of like air drums, and just before I discovered Kiss, my mom got me my first drum set. But it wasn't a drum set in the sense that you'd think it is. It was a Looney Tunes drum set that she got from Sears, and it had the paper heads, and it had Bugs Bunny on the front of the bass drum, little cheap ass cymbals and little plastic sticks, and like the bass drum, the brushes, and the bass drum pedal that had the big red ball on it. And that was my first drum set. And so I'd just sit in there and bang on them and everything, because I'd banged on pots and pans and stuff already and had a pretty good sense of timing. But I didn't really seriously want to play drums until I heard Peter on Kiss Alive 2. And I remember his solo. Was during God of Thunder. And I remember just wanting to play that. And I remember that part where he's going, and he speeds up and he's just, I shredded my drum head on my
Oh, I imagine.
I shredded my drum head on my my Bugs Bunny drum set. And so my mom was like, I guess my mom heard me because and so she went out to a music store and she bought me a cheap knockoff. I think it was a CB600, CB700. It was probably a knockoff from something, and I don't know how much she paid for it. My mom spoiled me. I was the baby, so I got spoiled a lot. And all my brother and my sister were older, and so I was the baby. And so I remember she got me that drum. But it was Kiss Alive 2 that made me want to start playing drums. And I remember me and my sister, I'd always dress up as Peter. She'd always dress up as Ace. She wasn't a musician. She's still not a musician. And, it was just more fantasy dressing up, and I'd take aluminum foil and I'd make the things that went around me, and I'd take the aluminum foil and wrap it on my arms and stuff, and put, I'd want to be Peter and stuff like that. But I think it wasn't until that was what made me pick up sticks and start playing. But the band that wanted me to be in a rock and roll band and form a rock and roll band actually was not Kiss. The band that made me want to be in a rock and roll band was actually Motley Crue. The very first time I heard Too Fast for Love, I remember my best friend Chris at the time, we were playing, he had just gotten a guitar and he sucked at it, and I wasn't very good at playing, but Motley Crue stuff was simple enough, some of the riffs was simple enough, and we started learning how to play Motley Crue songs off that album, and then we started incorporating in Kiss songs too, and other songs from bands that we had started listening to and stuff. He was really big like in the Judas Priest and Black Sabbath and stuff like that, Led Zeppelin, and so we kind of took off really fast. We were both self-taught. I've never had a lesson in my life, and so we were both self-taught, and we kind of just took off really fast doing it. But it was Peter that made me pick up a pair of sticks, but I didn't really want to actually join a band until I heard Motley Crue, Too Fast for Love, because they were a totally different animal than the Crue. They, Chris didn't make music like that. I'd never heard, up to that point, I'd never heard a song like Live Wire come out of Kiss, or Public Enemy #1, or
my Motley Crue was a heavy metal band.
Yeah, Motley Crue was a heavy metal band, but Kiss was definitely an influence, and there was other influencers along the way. Robert Sweet from Stryper was a huge influence on me. Bobby Blotzer from Rat, I really liked his playing. There's drummers that's influenced me over time. Neil Peart from Rush. As I got older, I got into Neil Peart real big. Although I didn't want to play drums like him, I could have been a technical drummer, and I can be technical when I need to be. But I like to play. My playing style is somewhere. If you put Peter Criss, Tommy Lee, and Robert Sweet in a blender and blended it all together, that's what you're going to get out of me. Is what I can be technical when I need to be, and I can be precise when I need to be, but I like to sit back in the chair and just groove too, kind of like Peter used to do. So, yeah.
I think what sucked me into rock and roll as a first grader was Rick Springfield.
Yeah.
Jesse's Girl 45.
Jesse's Girl. Yeah.
And then that gave me the rock and roll bug. But then my friend Dan, who introduced me to Kiss, he's a drummer, and I was learning to play guitar, and really it was Extreme Close Up. Totally made us want to form a band. We watched Extreme Close Up so much, and that whole, 10 East 23rd Street loft stuff, and we were like, we can do this too. We can be Simmons Stanley, and
I remember that.
The joy of being a youngster.
I remember that. The 80s was a good time for the rockumentaries. Skid Row, and into the early 90s, the very end of the 80s, early 90s, Skid Row had a good rockumentary, Oh Say Can You Scream, Stryper had a good one, Motley Crue had a good one,
Both those are good, Uncensored
Yeah.
and Decade.
And so, yeah, Kiss had a couple good ones. I mean, it's I love rockumentaries, and that's why I'm kind of really looking forward to The Dirt and everything. And I remember back when one of the things I missed that I don't even know if VH1 does it anymore, but I like the behind the musics, and
Oh man,
I used to love those. And I remember VH1 put out one where they were, I don't know if it was behind the music or if it was a biopic about Meatloaf. And I loved it. I've not done a retrospective on it yet, but it's coming soon. Because I had somebody mention to me, one of the Patreon subscribers, they actually just had me. It's coming up on my channel. They had me. They pay at a level at $10 a month where they basically can request for me to do a video for them, and they can keep it private for themselves, or it can go on Patreon, or it can eventually go to YouTube. And so far, she's been cool enough to let them. She's the one that requested Aldo Nova, and she asked me. She's like, she requested me to do a song. It's a '70s song. She's like, "Have you ever heard this before?" And I'm like, "I'm a huge '70s fan. A lot of my vinyl back here that you don't really see me pull out too often is all '70s stuff." And Peter Frampton Comes Alive's back there. A lot of Jackson Brown's back there and stuff like that. And she's like, you kind of, and I'm like, sure. She told me what it was. And I'm like, I don't think I know who they are, but I've never heard that band. I've never heard that song before, I don't think. And so I listened to it. I did a reaction to it, and that's going to be coming out. It'll go to Patreon a little bit, and then it'll be on YouTube. But she mentioned to me, she's like, you're old enough, you lived through the 70s, Kiss ain't the only thing you listened to in the 70s. I'm like, well, actually, to be totally honest with you, I was so obsessed with Kiss that from when I discovered them after Live 2 came out till after they started falling off around The Elder, I didn't really know any other kind of music existed. I really don't. I all the stuff from the early 80s, I just started discovering after Kiss had started falling off. But I didn't discover a lot of the 70s stuff that I listen to now until I was in my late teens, early to mid 20s. I started going back and listening to stuff, and that's when I was in my mid 20s before I discovered Jackson Brown. I mean, I'd heard Running on Empty. I mean, who hasn't? But I didn't know about the rest of his catalog, and his catalog's amazing, especially his 70s stuff. His 80s stuff, it's hit and miss. His more recent stuff, hit and miss. But his 70s stuff, you can't beat it. I mean, his albums, The Pretender, Running on Empty, Sky Blue and Black, Late for the Sky. I mean, those albums, they're just they're just amazing. But she's like, you just kind of skipped the 70s. I'm like, you're right. You're right. So there are some 70s albums that they may have not influenced me when I was younger, but they mean something to me now. So I'll go back and hit those albums, and one of them's a Jackson Brown album that I'm going to talk about. It'll be my favorite. It's my favorite one, and I'm going to definitely do "Bat Out of Hell" from Meatloaf, because I love that album too. That's just a great. And the story behind that album, I know the story behind that album. The story behind that album is just amazing. How that album even came to be, and how we almost didn't have it. Those guys just not. If those guys had took no for an answer one time, we wouldn't have that album. They were not going to take no for an answer, and they made that album. It took them a long time to make it because they were doing it in their part time. It took them a long time to make it, and when they was done with it, nobody wanted to touch it, and they had to keep shopping it to every and then they'd come back around, and then finally, I think it was Epic was like, okay, we'll release it, but you're gonna have to cut the songs down, and they're like, nope. So it's a great story behind that album, but I love it. So so I got some questions for you, because I've been doing all the talking and you're my guest, so I got some questions for you. I'm just gonna pull off the top of my head here. So if you made a video about it, I'd like to know. But what is your what's your favorite, most prized piece of Kiss memorabilia that you have?
I did make a video about it. I didn't call it my most prized piece of merchandise, but it would be and it's not even vintage, and it's not even worth anything. But it would be my 1989 Metal Madness magazine called The Might and Magic of Kiss.
Mm-hmm.
That was 88. I had taken my dive into Kiss, and my mom always went to the grocery store on Monday nights, and I went to the grocery store with her. This grocery store, there was no sackers, so I would go just to sack. So she was doing the shopping. I was at the magazine rack, and I dove into Kiss, brand new into them, and I looked down, and there's a Kiss magazine staring at me. And this was pre-internet days. You didn't know these things were coming out.
Yep.
And just holding that magazine in my hand felt like all the planets had lined up, and it felt like whatever path I was about to go down, I was meant to go down. And, 30 some years later, here I am still got Kiss all around my room, and I think and talk about them every day. So that would be my number one piece.
Yeah, my wife says to me, she asked me, she goes, do you ever get tired of talking about Kiss or thinking about Kiss? I'm like, I wouldn't be doing a YouTube channel if I did.
Nope.
It's something, and she's just not wired that way. Even music that she does like, she's not going to sit and think about them all the time. To her, it's just, it's kind of like entertainment. But I tell her that, like, there's a lot of music out there that is entertainment to me, but music's like a part of my soul. And, and it always blows people's mind when they're like, so your favorite band's Kiss? And I'm like, not really. I'm like, no, they're not. I'm like, my favorite band is actually a band called Typo Negative. And the reason why, it's not that they're better than Kiss. My oldest favorite band is Kiss. Longevity-wise, Kiss has been with me for, 43 years. Where this band has been with me since the early 90s. But they still came along at a time in my life, and they were introduced to me by a dear friend who is no longer with me. And he was like, you talk about your friend, it's Dan, your friend Dan. Imagine you not having your Dan anymore. So anything that Dan, especially something that Dan had introduced you to, which in your case was Kiss, my friend Chris introduced me to Typo Negative, and he loved them, and I loved them from when I first heard them. They were nothing like I'd ever heard before, and that was, whenever I was listening to a lot of stuff I was listening to at the time was like Alice in Chains and bands that nobody really don't know about anymore, like bands like Love Hate and bands like that, Faster Pussycat, bands like that, and bands were starting to sound normal, like bands like Tesla and stuff like that. And then here comes this gothic heavy metal, deeply influenced by the Beatles, deeply influenced by Sabbath, and in their own way, very Kiss-like. Very, very dramatic shows. All four members had unique kind of personalities to them. And, but they had a hit that kind of brought them to the, Christian Woman and Black Number One was a couple of their hits off their Bloody Kisses album. And, but they just kind of became a part of me. And after I lost Chris, it's almost like him being my childhood friend that I had met and couldn't even remember meeting. We'd been friends since we were probably before each other of us could either remember meeting, because his grandmother lived in the house. The way our house was set, the way our road was set, it would curve. And so his grandmother's house was like the back of her house faced the back of my mom's house, but it was kind of off to the side. And this was back during the day when people didn't have fences. So everybody's houses was near the front of the yards, and you had near the front of the lot. And then you had the big backyards, and there was houses that was this way and houses that was this way, with the big backyards in the middle. So it created this huge big field that nobody had fences. So that's where everybody went and played. And I literally lived the life of, you went outside, played till it was dark, or till you heard your mom come on the back porch and flip the light, or Brad, and you'd come home because their mom was flipping the light, mom was yelling at you, and you had to stay. They really didn't want you going inside of people's houses. You weren't supposed to stay outside and stuff like that. But it was that time if you did something wrong, you usually got disciplined by the person's house that you did wrong at. By the time you got home, you're just going to get it again because they'd done called them and said, look, your son did this, da-da-da-da-da. And you got it again. It was a different era. It was a different time. But whenever I lost him, it's like part of me died with it and with him. And that is the way I hold on to him. And so it's not it's not just for that, but it's just like you said, a lot of times you said in one of your things, I think it was with Hot in the Shade, sometimes it's not what about the album's about. It's about what the album is tied to in your life. And sometimes it's not about what the band is about. It's about what the band is tied to in your life. And although Kiss was there for me from a very early age and influenced me to start playing drums and started me down that path and everything, I still have Kiss. I don't have Typo Negative anymore. Peter Steele died. He died. The funny thing is he died on my birthday. He died on April 14th. Died of a heart attack, and I think he's been dead. I think he died in 2000. So he's coming up on, or can't remember his 2000, and he's not been dead. I don't think he's been dead 20 years. Probably in 2010 maybe, because I remember thinking it's probably coming up on the 10-year anniversary of him being dead. So I think he died in 2010. If I'm not mistaken. But that's why it's because of, it's because of that. But yeah, memorabilia, it's like you said, it's not about whether it's worth something or or how much it's worth or how rare it is or how valuable it is. It's
what's in, it's the heart attachment.
Yeah, and my friend Scott, he showed me his room and everything, and he didn't have to do that. He offered to let me film in his room. He didn't have to do that. That's a private area in his house, and that's his collection, and I was very respectful. I let him, he set the shot up, and I wanted it to be exactly the way he wanted it, and he prepped the room for a while before we started filming. He sat stuff out, and everything was it was all the behind-the-scenes stuff that you guys didn't see. Everything was just so the way he wanted it. And then afterwards, I was like, man, do you mind if we do some filming and you talk about some of your stuff? And the stuff that he pulled out, I had one of the commenters down in the comments say, well, that stuff ain't worth anything. That's stuff that you could have got from Spencer's in the early 90s. And it doesn't matter if it was worth anything or not, or whether it was valuable or not. Some of that stuff, let me ask you this. How many of us have a picture of us with Gene Simmons in his hotel room with Gene Simmons in his bathrobe?
Yeah.
And that wasn't a photo op like people pay thousands of dollars for, where you put an arm. He sat and talked to the guy for like 2 hours. And Gene talked about his mom. He talked about his kids. He talked about Shannon. He talked about things from his childhood and how he has an obsession for cakes and sweets. And anybody that knows the man knows that he does. He loves sweets. He loves his cakes. He loves his cookies. And if you know him, you know that's, the guy calls him Uncle Gene. He knows Gene, So, that to me, just that corner, I'd be like, dude, I'd like to just have that experience right there that you had. Everything else in this room can go away. Just to have that experience and have that picture on my wall, that's awesome. Because that's
and I agree. You can look at the Spencer stuff and you can say, there was so much of it, but there was so much of the stuff in the 70s too.
The only difference is 40 years versus 20 years. In all honesty, the reason why the stuff from the 70s is worth so much money now is because we didn't take care of it. We tore it up. We threw it away. And now there's not that much of it anymore, and it don't exist anymore. And
no one can say who lived through that Spencer's era. No one can say they didn't enjoy the fuck out of walking into a Spencer's.
Oh, God, yes.
Looking at that stuff. That's why you went to the mall.
I loved it. I didn't buy a whole lot of the Spencer stuff because during that era when that was going on, I had 2 small kids and I didn't have the money to, I basically had the money to get Psycho Circus and to go on the reunion tour. I didn't even get to go on the farewell tour, but I had because I think I was working. I think I was working that job where I traveled all the time. But it was like Kiss heaven. You walked in and it's like Gene Simmons threw up all over Spencer's. It was amazing. You know, there's a store here near my house. It's a record store. I've talked about it in my stuff before, called Green Eggs and Jam, which I think that's just the coolest name.
Oh, it is.
But
cool.
me and my boss, we had to. He wanted me to. He took me for a walk today around the block because we were talking about some things, and we just happened to walk up past the record store. There's 2 record stores on this block, and one is Main Street Jams, and one's Green Eggs and Jam. And I've talked about both of them in my record shopping videos, and I was like, hold on a second. Was we approaching? I'm like, hold on, you got to see this place. And we just walked to the door, and I'm like, look in there. And it was glorious. He's got like the Kiss lava lamp, and I featured him. He's got the Kiss cups and the Kiss shot glasses and the Kiss dolls and the masks and the makeup kit. And a lot of that stuff it's left over it's the Spencer stuff that's left over. I'm like, it's little mini Spencers in there. He's like, what are you talking about? I'm like, oh, wait a minute. You're not a Kiss fan. You don't know what I'm talking about. But and you know what? That stuff is creeping up in price because guess what? It is now approaching, and where's it going to be in another 20? Once Kiss hangs it up, and I mean, people always say, I want a reissue. I want reissues. Yeah, reissues are going to be worth money to my kids or my grandkids, but it's these albums. It's these albums, and even the rare albums and the stuff like you have. It never fails. I want you to go ahead and know something so you can know this happens. Just so you know what Brant's doing when Rick's doing something. What's Brant doing? Whenever you put a video out, I usually watch it pretty quickly. I'm usually one of your first viewers and one of your first commenters, unless it all depends on what time of day it comes out. And but you can guarantee if it's a video where you're featuring a piece of merchandise, you can go ahead and guarantee and know in your mind that by the time that video's done, I've already on another screen pulled up a browser and looked on eBay to see how much that shit is now. And like pulling up the puzzles and seeing the puzzles damn $300 and seeing some of this other stuff. And I'm just like, oh, dude, you make me sick. So yeah, I'm price checking. By the time your video gets done, I'm price checking.
Well, there's some collections that literally make me sick, and I just have to say this: John Five's Knights in Saint Service Instagram page is. Do you follow it?
No, I think the only one I follow merchandise is the A Coin guy that you also follow.
Oh yeah,
He's got some stuff too. But I need to follow that. I need to follow that page.
He has, and this is what made me nauseous. And I'm not bashing him at all. I think it's great he has it. He has the color proofs of the color forms and rub and play boxes. How does one even find that?
Right. Well, you saw what my friend Scott had on his wall over beside the oil painting. He had an uncut sheet of the phone cards.
Uh-huh.
That wasn't a bunch of the cards in there put together. It was an uncut sheet of the phone cards, every one in the whole collection, uncut. And I was just like, to me, that's cool. I mean, I know he loves his poster and everything, and his painting, and it is cool.
That painting was awesome.
Especially since he also got it signed. And I love the story. I love that he included.
Oh God.
He was telling me about it ahead of time, and whenever we went to go shoot the video, I'm like, hey, that part where Paul went to go sign it in the wrong place and you stopped him, I'm like, don't leave that part out. Be sure to, because I said that's the kind of stuff that my viewers like, and I knew you'd dig hearing something like that. You can imagine Paul said, hey, no, sign over here. I can just be Paul be like, what? But he's like, yeah, but he probably didn't want to sign next day, so he's going to sign it on his leg, and he's like,
I love the whole the roadside, finding the artist that painted that. Wasn't it like a roadside?
Yeah. It was like, it was like a.
That's amazing.
Yeah, and it's like his favorite album cover, so he's got the painting of his favorite album cover and everything. We're talking about, you're talking about reminiscing and everything and merchandising. It reminds me back to in front of my house, and I'll put it in my video too. There used to be 2 places that don't stand anymore. One's a vacant parking lot, which is sad. And the other one, it's a little like maybe 5 or 6 place little brick strip. It's got like a hairstylist place and accounting and stuff like that. But it used to be this little strip, an old school strip. There was a barbershop on one end, and a laundromat on one end, and in the middle it was an arcade. And I remember that they had a Kiss pinball machine in there, and they had a jukebox that had Kiss on it. And so I'd go in there, and Mom would give us, some quarters, and we'd go up there. And I remember I used to think it was the coolest thing in the world because I'd go over to a jukebox, and I'd put Kiss on, and Kiss be playing on the jukebox, and I'd go over and I'd get on the Kiss pinball machine. I'd play Kiss pinball while listening. I'm gonna own a Kiss. There's a guy here locally selling he's selling a Kiss pinball machine that is in dang good shape, but he wants $3,500 for it.
And I loved in your video, you're like, if I had $3,500, I would spin this camera around, and you guys would be looking at a Kiss pinball machine.
Yeah.
I'm the same way.
It would be right there in that corner. It'd be right over there. But
that's my white whale that I just long for.
Yeah, and there was a store right beside that called Little General, and it eventually turned into a Circle K, but it was Little General, and it was a convenience store, and it was beside Chris's house, Chris's grandma's house that no longer stands. Chris was adopted, and his mom lived with her mother, and so Chris lived with his grandmother. And there was this red mud dirt hill that we had to walk up to get to it. It was the shortcut, and we'd come around the back side of Little General, and we'd go in there. And as soon as you walked in, if you took an immediate right, there was a couple video game machines, and there was a couple pinball. It eventually turned into video games because I remember that's first time I ever played Donkey Kong was there. The first time I ever played the Tron game was there. But on the very first aisle was the magazine rack. And I remember going in there and looking, and the very top rack had the real high front to it because that's where the Playboys and the Hustlers and stuff was. So you couldn't see the front of it. You just see the very top. But the magazines down we'd go in there and you'd look for Kiss. I remember I got the Grooves Kiss magazine there. I got the magazine with the band pointing on it, and Peter Criss leaves Kiss. I got that one. All the Kiss magazines I got from there.
Did you cut them up?
I don't even have them anymore. I probably did cut them up. I think at one point in time, like I was telling in my live feed, they had all the pictures of Ace behind his cards, and there was one where Gene had his face above Alive 2, and another one he had it below it, and I cut the picture out and put his face together to try to see what he looked like without makeup. I
had actually heard a rumor that Gene and Paul insisted on doing photos like that because they were tired of being not recognized. Like when they went to places like Studio 54. Yeah. And they
wanted to be recognized locally but not globally. Yeah. But I remember that's where I got my Don Russ cards. That's where, and I remember at one point in time I went in there and I bought like the last 2 or 3 packs in the pack, and the box was empty. And I remember walking up to the lady and saying, "Hey, can I have this display box?" And she's like, "I'm like, it's empty." And she's like, "Sure." So I used to have one of the display boxes. Don't have it. Don't have none of that anymore. Like I said, man, my stuff getting stolen, man, I try not to even think about it. It breaks my heart. It makes me sick. But, it is what it is. It happens. But, I would like to have, I've seen online and stuff like that, and I'll eventually have some of the cards again. You can get some of the complete sets in pretty decent shape for not too ridiculous.
If ever those expos roll around, that's a good place to, you can always find somebody selling something that's not meant for a good price that you have an emotional attachment to that everyone else is going to pass by because it's not in perfect condition.
Oh, yeah.
And that's the best time ever to jump on it. There's
some of those, man, I can still see of the cards in my head, like the one that's the horizontal of Ace, and it's all blue, and he's holding his guitar out to the side and looking ahead, And Paul, there's just certain ones, man. I can close my eyes and I can still see in the back of my head. Holy Grail piece of merchandise. One for you, if you could have realistically a piece of merchandise, and money really wasn't so much an option, or if you had to pay some money towards it and you found it at a decent enough price that you could afford, what is it that you'd want?
Beyond pinball machine, because that would be my number one answer.
Well, yeah, the pinball machine's mine too. So let's go ahead and take the pinball machine off the plate.
So money's no object, and it's out there somewhere, correct?
Money's no object within reason, and it's out there somewhere.
Okay. I would have to say the makeup kit from the 70s.
Kiss My Face.
Mm-hmm.
That's creepy. And I've seen it too, unused.
Unused.
Kiss My Face makeup kit with the thing in it. I had that, dude. I had two of them. I had one.
Did you use it?
Yeah. Halloween the Halloween that it came out. I had it, and my sister had one. And when she got done after Halloween, when she got done with it, she gave it to me. So I had two of them. And I remember opening up. It had the book, and it had the pictures, and it showed you how to put what where and everything. And there's apparently a misprint of one. I think it's Peter Chris's name. There's only one S maybe, or there's if you look up online or whatever, and you do a little bit of research, there's actually two versions of that, and one of them is a misprint. And the reason why I'd like to have that unused is it's a twofold reason. One is kind of like what you talked about. I have a memory attachment to it. I remember that Halloween, me and my sister running around the neighborhood going, "Come on, Peter! Come on, Ace!" And we were running from house to house, and we called each other Peter and Ace that night. We weren't Brant and Kelly. We were Peter and Ace, running around the neighborhood, getting trick-or-treats,
Those horrible orange and black peanut butter nougat candies.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. So there's an emotional attachment to it. But the other thing, too, is I love the solo album era. And just anything I see that has the solo album pictures on it. Anything. It can be a poster. It can be. I'm actually contemplating Kiss Online right now. They have album cover series T-shirts, and I want every one of them. I mean, I used to have one that had all four of them on them, but I also had. I think I had Peter's, and I think I might have had Ace's, but. When I was a kid, even though I liked Paul Stanley and Ace's solo album better, I still was kind of a Peter fan and kind of also adopted Ace because kind of like my sister. But I started when Ace's solo album came out, I was like, this is pretty damn good, it's better than a Kiss album, So, but I just love the whole solo album, the poster, the big posters with the individuals, and just anything that has those four images of the Geraldo Caraguti paintings. And if you look at them on the album, there's so much detail. I mean, you can see hair, and you can see the individual. If you look at this thing, you see like the individual hairs. You see hairs coming off and like going... and you look at the makeup, you can see, I mean, these things look damn real. My son actually is like, those aren't real pictures? I'm like, no, those are paintings.
Those are four album covers that are perfect for sitting down on the floor in front of your stereo and just staring at.
Yeah, I mean, so I love anything, and that merchandise had the four solo albums on it, and I just love anything from that solo album era. And a lot of stuff you see that has to do with the Love Gun Alive era. Those two eras that kind of mesh together. I love that kind of stuff too. Like, anytime you see any of the posters or, but it would probably be the makeup kit, unopened makeup kit. But I'd like to have other things. Like, I'd like to have the radio. I'd like to have the guitar.
The guitar.
I'd like to have the guitar. I'd like to have a lunchbox. And I've seen some not mint lunchboxes that I've almost bought before. And I wished I would have now in hindsight. But just almost anything from that era. But if like I said, if we take the pinball machine off the list, because that's the number one, it would be the makeup kit. It would be.
I would... If anyone needs to be a guest at a Kiss Expo, it is the two guys that are in the makeup kit commercial. Imagine having those two guys at a convention and you could like get your picture taken with them,
That'd be awesome.
That would be
pretty cool.
super cool.
That'd be cool. Well, man, that's really all I've got. I mean, I don't know if you've got anything else. This is shaped out to be quite a lengthy episode, and I hope that the viewers actually sojourn through it, because I believe they'll pick up some pretty good nuggets along the way.
Yeah, and I appreciate this, and I thank you for a chance to. I love to talk shop, and it's always fun to talk Kiss with a friend and a fan. So thank you for this opportunity.
Always. And like I said, guys, anybody, if you've not seen Rick's channel, I'm going to put it in the description down there. And definitely check his channel out. It's All For You Demon. If you like hearing somebody talk about Kiss memories and memories that's tied with merchandise or tied with albums, who loves dogs, he's got 2 big, beautiful dogs that he's very proud of, and this guy puts a lot in his videos. It takes a lot to create videos and put time into videos and stuff. It takes a lot of time to do it, and you can definitely tell he likes to throw stuff in, and he's kind of like me. He's got videos sometimes you got to watch them all the way to the end, because you never know what little nugget you're going to get there right at the end. And but Rick, I really appreciate this, taking your time, and I'm glad that you came. Hopefully, we can see in a live stream soon that you can make it and make it to a live stream and talk to some people along with talking with me and everything. And
totally. I am totally looking forward to that. Yeah. Your next live stream, I am here.
All right, man. Well, everybody, I hope you appreciate it. This is Rick here, and I love your sign off. What's your sign off? I'll let you do your sign off, and then I'll do mine.
I always say, take care, be safe, and I will talk to you soon.
I will talk to you soon. Never stop having fun.
Yeah.
I love that. I mean, it's like you get to the end of it. It's funny how we get things about our channels. Mine's always, see you next time. Thanks for watching or whatever. And I'd start my videos. Hey guys, it's Brant. We have our little things we do. But I'm like with you, you're doing it, and I'm like, never stop having fun. Never stop. You need to throw something in. Never stop waxing, about Kiss, and never stop, never stop enjoying the puzzle, or whatever. And I'll talk to you soon. Yeah, I love that. But yeah, Rick, I really appreciate it. I'm Brent. This is In My Head channel, and I'm out of here. Thanks for watching, guys. I'll see you next time.
Thanks, everybody.